Welcome back to the King Films College Football Playoff Predictions and Top 25 Rankings. And we've got the College Football Playoff Committee rankings coming out after next week. So let's see where we are entering this week. There were a lot of buys last week. Again, this next week, there will be also a lot of buys. That's why you don't see a lot of ranked on ranked matchups, but let's get right into it. Number 25, LSU beat Ole Miss, previously undefeated. We always thought Ole Miss was a little bit sketchy as a team, and Jaden Daniels played great in this matchup. LSU puts up 40, and their defense holds just enough to ward off Ole Miss at home. That's a great win for LSU, and I hate to say it, if LSU wins out, they're in the playoff, because they still have the division in their own destiny. So that would be a win over Bama, then a win over either Georgia or Tennessee, probably undefeated. You can't let out a 2-loss LSU in that case. And obviously that game against Florida State, the committee likes to ward off first game losses. So that one was a little sketchy as well, with that missed extra point and all that. Number 24, we've got Texas, dropped a third game. The only reason they're on here is because I think that the committee probably won't factor in some of those games without Ewers. Obviously, they've played a pretty hard schedule. The metrics like them, as they've choked a few of these games, to be quite frank. Probably all of them, they had a decent shot to win. So they remain at 24, a couple spots down after their third loss of the season. Still think this Texas team is very good, and they'll show it down the stretch. Number 23, NC State was off last week. They move up a couple spots because of other teams moving out of the rankings again. I don't like this team as a ranked team. I think they'll regress down without Leary. But right now their resume is indicative of the 23rd team in the nation. Number 22, we've got Cincinnati. They have one loss to Arkansas, and that is what kept me from putting them in the rankings until this week. They will play UCF on the road. Last week they had a close one with SMU, so they've had close ones against USF and SMU in the past 2 weeks. They've gotten a little lucky, and I've thought that Arkansas really dominated this Cincinnati team. So it's obviously an easy strength of schedule, but you have to wonder if Arkansas was just playing that soft schedule of the American, would they be undefeated right now, as Arkansas also went to BYU and blew them up, who were previously rated. So that's the SEC getting some out-of-conference wins. But let's move on to number 21, Oregon State. They've put together quite the resume so far. 2-loss Pac-12 team, and they will play a fellow 2-loss Washington team. The winner of that should be rated highly, assuming they're able to take care of the game. Oregon State did have one near mishap at Stanford, but they've gotten over that in recent weeks and put together a solid showing in Pac-12 play. Number 20, North Carolina, 6-1, also on the bye here, but they have a pretty good resume with just the loss to Notre Dame, which makes me doubt this team, as Notre Dame won that pretty handily in the ACC as a whole. Number 19, we've got Utah, also on the bye week. Number 18, Kansas State suffered that brutal loss at TCU. They just couldn't get it going down the stretch, took that early lead just like Oklahoma State did against TCU the week before. Those two teams will play in what should be the game of the week. Number 17, we've got Tulane. Stays up in American Conference play, so they move up accordingly in the rankings. Moving into the middle 8, we've got Illinois at 16, continues to take care of business in the Big Ten. Number 15, UCLA goes down after they lost to Oregon pretty handily in Eugene, and I didn't think the UCLA offense was a problem here. Oregon stole some possessions, especially with that onside kick. That was demoralizing. They controlled the ball around the half, making sure that they got just the extra possession by virtue of holding the ball last going into halftime. And UCLA just couldn't get their hands on the ball enough, had to settle for a couple field goals, and ended up losing that one. Still think this UCLA team is very good with the one loss. They'll have a couple games down the stretch to seal their place in the Pac-12 championship. Number 14, Syracuse actually moves up here because they played Clemson good. Obviously, you've got to factor in that they were almost going to beat one of the best teams in the nation. They were getting very lucky, obviously, with that turnover margin. Just gets down to 3 at the end of the game. Syracuse stayed close. I don't think this is a great team, but their resume is pretty good, and they only have the one loss, so we'll keep them here for now. Number 13, Ole Miss falls after their aforementioned loss to LSU. They'll head to Texas A&M in another brutal road game. They're only slight favorites there. Number 12, Wake Forest continues to take care of business in ACC play. Number 11, Penn State shoots up after that Power Bowl performance against Minnesota at home in the whiteout game. That was a very good sign for Penn State coming into an Ohio State game where the offense will have to be similarly potent because Ohio State's is just very good, and I don't think there's any environment in which Penn State can contain C.J. Stroud in this Buckeye offense. Number 10, Oregon actually moves down a spot. This is just because of the other opponents that Oregon has played. BYU's been regressing down in recent weeks. They got blown up by Liberty. Obviously, that heavy loss against Georgia does not help Oregon's case here. And I think overall, USC is the better team here. They barely lost their game to Utah. They haven't beaten as many marquee opponents. Obviously, they do have the win over number 21 in my rankings, Oregon State. So, with that being said, we get number 9 USC, who was on the bye, so we will skip over them after that Pac-12 sequence. But for now, we'll get into this in the bold predictions. I do have Oregon in the Rose Bowl, so take that as you will, because USC does not actually control their own destiny in getting to the Pac-12 championship. So that's the one wrinkle I'll add in there. Number 8, Oklahoma State. Again, it was a game that could have gone either way in Boone Pickens against Texas, but they get it done and live to fight another day against Kansas State. We will have a lock on this game. Please click in the top right if you'd like to watch it, because we had an undefeated week in the locks last week. Number 7, TCU. We've also got a lock on their game. They'll head to West Virginia after beating out Kansas State. It did not look great at the beginning again for TCU, but they're undefeated, so the College Football Playoff Committee can't really deny an undefeated team, but they still have some tests left on that schedule. Number 6, Clemson continues to make good on their undefeated record, but this week was even worse for them with that turnover margin. Had to bench Uiagalelei, and I don't know. He's still the starting quarterback. I think that he is the better quarterback after what I saw out of the backup, who just mostly ran the ball. It didn't really matter. They just wanted to get the ball out of DJ's hand so he wouldn't throw another pick. That's what it seemed like to me, at least. They do escape with that win, and their schedule looks pretty easy now. And I'm wondering what the committee will do with a undefeated Clemson. Obviously, they'll have to be in, but if they lose one of these, it's going to be interesting because Clemson did not look great in that game. Obviously, they could have lost to Wake Forest very easily. And there's other teams that are in maybe a powerful SEC like Alabama, who I currently have above them, that lost in a very back-and-forth game in Tennessee and barely lost. But Clemson takes care of business. They're undefeated right now. Number 5, Georgia stays undefeated in SEC play. And overall, number 4, Michigan was on the bye week this week. We'll see what they are able to do against Michigan State this week in the big rivalry game. Number 3, Alabama just crushed Mississippi State, which is why they go up a spot here over Michigan. And the only reason I'll justify this is really that Tennessee game. It's the number 1 team in the nation. Alabama really should have won if their field goal kicker makes a kick. So, I mean, you can't really argue with Alabama being number 3 here, especially after that beatdown of a good Mississippi State team. Obviously, they've lost 2 in a row, haven't looked great on the road, but Alabama manhandled them. They'll have some tests down the stretch. We'll see if they can clean it up, maybe even clean up the SEC West, and then maybe a rematch with Tennessee or Georgia. We'll see what happens there. Number 2, Ohio State stays good with a big win at Iowa, forcing many turnovers, putting up a ton of points. I'm interested in that Big Ten showdown this week. Number 1, Tennessee took care of business in their cupcake game there. So let's move on to the bowl projections here, and we've got not much movement. College football playoff stays the same. I'm not putting Alabama in there for now. Georgia and Tennessee will be the 2. But I move USC into the Cotton Bowl as they're ranked above UCLA. Oregon is in the Rose Bowl, so they move from the Cotton Bowl to the Rose Bowl. Otherwise, Penn State moves into the Orange Bowl for Ole Miss, and Wake Forest is the ACC representative. Tulane stays strong as a Group of 5 representative. Thank you for watching. Please be sure to subscribe to the channel. We're on the chase for 2K. Would really help if you did that, and check out the other betting locks and college football videos.